Welcome to A Line Through Time, where I take the time to look through your favourite franchises and work out how it all lines up. Fire Emblem turns 30 today. You feeling old yet? I'm honestly not that familiar with the series beyond Awakening, Three Houses, Warriors, and the bits and pieces I've picked up over the years, so this coverage will be brief. It's really more of a basic explanation of how the games tie together for people who are new to the franchise. The series began with the 1990 release of Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light for the Famicom. The story follows Prince Marth amassing an army to reclaim his stolen throne. 2 years later, Fire Emblem Gaiden was released, taking place alongside the original but on a different continent, following a pair of new characters named Celica and Arm. The series made its Super Famicom debut in '94 with Mystery of the Emblem, half retelling of the original game and half sequel, taking place 3 years after the original. Another 2 years later, the series received a prequel in the form of Genealogy of the Holy War, which follows a father and son in 2 time periods set long before Marth's story. The following September, BS Fire Emblem Arcanea War Chronicles was released. This is a series of short scenarios following each of Marth's comrades prior to the original game. In 2000, Thracia 776 was released on the Super Famicom despite the N64 having been out since a month after Genealogy. The story runs parallel to Genealogy, following Leaf from that game's second generation cast. Odd choices all around for the series' return from a 3-year break. The much more fitting return came in the form of 2002's The Binding Blade for the GBA, which moved to the Aleb setting and introduced Roy as its lead. In the series' quickest turnaround, The Blazing Blade released only 13 months later. This game is a prequel following Roy's father Eliwood 20 years prior to Binding Blade. Thanks to Marth and Roy's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Melee, this was the first Fire Emblem to release in the West as simply Fire Emblem. In 2004, the Sacred Stones released, taking place on another separate continent with no known ties to the previous settings, which hasn't been revisited since. For whatever reason, the game received an English-exclusive 5-page prequel comic made in collaboration between Nintendo, Udon and GamePro. It follows some unnamed general who isn't in the game itself. In 2005, the series returned to consoles with Path of Radiance on the GameCube, which introduced Ike as its lead. This takes place on yet another new continent with no known connections to other entries, but it was revisited in Radiant Dawn on the Wii 2 years later, taking place 3 years after Path of Radiance. In 2008, the DS received Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, a remake of the first game. 2 years later, Mystery of the Emblem's new plot and BS Fire Emblem were also remade as New Mystery of the Emblem Heroes of Light and Shadow. The first new entry in 5 years released on the 3DS and brought the series into the mainstream, Fire Emblem Awakening. Returning to the original setting thousands of years later, it centres on Marth's descendant Prince Chrom, who encounters his time-travelling daughter Lucina, who has come to avert a terrible future, a la Trunks from Dragon Ball. Both of her English voice actresses have played Kid Trunks, oddly enough. With its success, the team went more ambitious with 2015's Fire Emblem Fates, which is set on yet another new continent and has 3 different story branches based on the allegiance of the protagonist, Corrin. The player buys either the Conquest or Birthright version and can then purchase the other and the DLC exclusive third route from there. It didn't go over too well with fans, which seems to have influenced the most recent entry to some extent. Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valencia is the 2017 remake of Gaiden. And then we have the most recent entry, 2019's Three Houses. Like Fates, the game is set on a new continent with 3 story paths, all of which are in the game by default, with a 4th path added later as DLC. There are also 3 spin-offs that are most likely not canon. One could argue the Shin Megami Tensei collaboration Tokyo Mirage Sessions is canon due to the franchise's various different settings that might all be set in different worlds, but Fire Emblem Warriors and Heroes are big crossovers between numerous games in the series, which is less likely to be considered canonical. So, if you're looking to get into Fire Emblem, it's one of those franchises where you can basically just start anywhere aside from Thracia 776 and Radiant Dawn. All the other direct continuations are prequels, part remakes, or set far enough away in space or time to basically be new stories. The series also has a number of drama CDs that are apparently authored by the dev teams of the respective games, meaning they're canon. But without any English releases and with my limited knowledge of most of these stories, I can't really place them. Same with the comic anthologies. So this is what the Fire Emblem timelines look like. They should just place them all into one world, but I guess you can't just keep adding more and more continents or it'll get silly. And it's been brought to my attention post-upload that 2 characters from Fire Emblem 1 show up in Gaiden, so it's probably set after 1, but if Intelligent Systems expects me to care, they should have made a simple calendar instead of like 3 based on the continent you're talking about. If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they can suffer along with you. Today's recommended series is Shane Brain's Fire Emblem Retrospective. He goes very in depth on each game and he needs more subs, go check him out.